this life is o'er, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away when the shadows of this life is gone. I'll fly away like a bird from prison bars have flown. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know many of you are grieving and hurting. Know that I hurt with you. Family, my prayers are with you. I pray that the Lord comforts you in the days to come. That you will cling tight to the memories that you have. If you were a part of Linda's in-group, you know that Linda had a testimony. She loved it. She altered it. She kept it with her most everywhere she went. She talked about it a lot. The family has asked that I read the testimony. I know that many of you don't like somebody standing in front of you and reading, but I think it is very fitting for Linda's life. It tells you a lot about her journey. So I pray that you will listen as I read. It starts with an introduction of who she was. Hi, I am Linda Turner, all the way from Sumter, South Carolina. I spent New Year's Eve 2006 in a tent in the rain at Lakeview Plantation. Since then, my life has changed significantly and all for the better. For you to understand how blessed I am, I will have to go back to the beginning because my journey has taken me more than 40 years. I was born in a small, poor farming community in southern Iowa. I was the fifth of 9 children. I don't remember ever a time when either of my parents worked for a living. They were what people call white trash. My father was a very violent man, frequently beat my mother. Sometimes he would turn his attention to the children, and by the time I was 3, he had tried to kill me at least 3 times. He kicked me down a flight of stairs and tried to drown me in a rain barrel. My parents did not come from trash. Y'all gonna have to bear with me. My father's parents and my mother's parents were hardworking, well-respected farmers. I believe my parents were products of spare the rod, spoil the child. They were both only children. I believe they were spoiled, rotten, and given everything they wanted. My mother's father was a wonderful man, a horseman. He was the one who first introduced me to horses. I was so young the first time I got on a horse I can't remember it, and I can remember things from when I was 2. My home life was very sad, but if I could get over to Grandpa's and be with the horses, everything was better. I remember my grandparents would ride us on the horses with them when we were real little. When my grandparents didn't have time to give us a ride, Grandpa would let me go to the barn all by myself. I would go coax 2 of the horses in the barn and into a stall that had a hay manger with raised feed boxes. I would put grain in the feed boxes so the horses would get close with their heads over the feed box. I would reach around behind their neck and grab some mane and pull myself up on their neck. Then I would climb down their mane to their back. I would just sit on them in the barn for hours, pretending to be on great adventures. Finally, Grandpa decided to get a Shetland pony for me and the rest of the grandchildren. It was not just any Shetland pony. It was the meanest, most stubborn one ever. And I loved her more than anything. I was the only child who was brave or mean enough to saddle her and ride her by myself. She was so mean that the other children couldn't ride her. I would have to walk around the barn lot so that she would follow me, trying to bite me, so that each child could get a ride. As you can see, I've had a passion for horses all my life. When I was 9, my life drastically changed. My father went to prison, for good this time. My mother chose men over caring for her children, so we all went to foster homes. That same year, my grandpa died and the horses were sold. The 3 things that made life bearable were gone. My grandpa, the horses, and my brothers and sisters were all gone. That is when I started going to church. I was fortunate enough to be put in a home with my younger sister, Mary Lou. My mother was allowed to visit us occasionally. Easter of that year, she gave both Mary Lou and me pretty dresses and Bibles. She also took us to church. My mother didn't continue to go for long, but Mary and I would get up every Sunday morning and put on one of our Sunday dresses and walk to church. I enjoyed going to church. It felt safe, and I could forget the bad stuff. I loved to sit in the front row of Grace Tabernacle Baptist Church and sing as loud as I could. I soon decided to give my life to Christ. I was saved. Not long after I was saved, something happened at the church that involved my mother. She had done something bad enough that caused the church to ask her to not return, and as a result, we didn't feel welcome there anymore. Mary Lou and I still wanted to go to church, so we would walk to neighboring churches in the town where we lived. We never found another church where we felt like we belonged, but we would go anyway. The foster family we lived with did nothing to make it easy for us to go to church, but the good thing is they didn't stop us from going. The foster homes we lived in, all 10 of them, were abusive both mentally and physically. I believed that the squeaky wheel gets oiled, so I would go to the social worker's office once a week and complain about the way we were being treated in the home we lived in. The social worker would say, "I don't see what the problem is," and I would cry. Then a wise old lady told me, "Get so mad, you don't cry." So I did. I didn't cry for 25 years, and I stayed mad too. Finally, Mary Lou and I were moved. Unfortunately, we were sent to different homes. My new home was out in the country, and the family did not go to church, so I couldn't. I soon got discouraged, and I would pray every night. I would pray as hard as I could. I prayed so hard I ached inside. I prayed to be moved to a good family, and I prayed for a horse. I prayed harder for the horse than the good family. Well, I moved 10 times in 10 years. The 10th home was the only good one. Nope, I never got a horse. I had become angry and bitter with God. I didn't understand what I had done that was so bad that I deserved the life I was living. There had to be a reason. And why couldn't I have a horse? Horse is all I ever asked for. Every birthday, every Christmas. People would give me horse stuff, books, statues, and I would get so angry. I ached for a horse. After they separated Mary Lou and me, I quit. Wasn't able to go to church. Not long after that, I quit praying. I never got a horse. But God did keep me near horses. The foster homes I was moved to would have a relative with horses, or I would find a friend who had a horse. So even though I didn't have a horse, I always had access and could get to ride now and then. I was too angry with God and too selfish to see that he was making my contact with horses possible. I moved in with a new family when I was in the 7th grade. They were sending their children to a Christian school and told me that I would be going also. I said, no way, and you can't make me. Well, they made me, and I was the most rebellious student ever. I learned a great deal of Bible those 2 years. I had to study the Bible to prove everyone at the Christian school wrong. Once you started at the school, the girls were not allowed to cut their hair. I demanded to know why. It was my hair, and I could do with it what I wanted. I was shown scripture that said something about a woman's hair being her crown of glory. 1 Corinthians 11:15, but if a woman have long hair, it is a glory for her hair is given her for a covering. Proverbs 16:31, the hairy head is a crown of glory, if it be found in the way of righteousness. I said, well, maybe I like the short crown. I am sure they don't miss me. The ironic thing about the whole argument was I had hair down to my waist all my life till about 3 years ago. Through all the rough times, even though I was angry, I still believed and loved God. I wasn't a bad person, but I didn't live a Christian life. Morally and ethically, I've always been a good person. That is something God has given me because I didn't inherit it or learn it from the families I lived with. As I grew up, I would go to a church off and on, but always as an outsider. I was so angry for the life I had been given. Even after I became an adult, a wife, and a mother, I couldn't let the anger go. I wanted my child to know God, so I sent her to a Christian school. I needed her to know God, and I couldn't be the one to show her the way. Now I can tell you the sheep story. Over 6 years, from 2000 to 2006, God worked through a lot of people to get to me. It is so amazing. For most of my life, I felt like a lone sheep out roaming over the green, grassy hillsides while God's children were in the flock down in the valley. Over the years, I would look down the hill and would see how happy and at peace the flock was. I would think to myself, someday I'll get back down there, but not now, not just yet. Well, in 2000, I changed jobs and I was working with some women who were in God's flock. They would occasionally look up the hill and motion for me to come down and join them. I would look down and think to myself, someday, but not now. Over time, I met more people who were in the flock down in the valley, and they would look up and motion for me to come down. I began to wonder if God was trying to tell me something. I would still look down and think, someday, but not now. During this same time, I was exposed to a life that was pulling me away from the flock. I now understand this was my crisis of faith. By now, I was 40 years old, and I still didn't have a horse. I had long quit praying for one. I didn't even think about getting one anymore. In 2002, the man who is now my husband found a place where I could lease a horse. I never knew that a person could rent or lease a horse. I quickly had the passion back. I was leasing one of the orneriest horses ever, and I wanted to buy him. My husband was very much against that idea, so I didn't. Then in 2004, something began to change, and I decided I'd waited long enough for a horse, and I was going to get one. God is very patient, because he and Margie planted that seed 2 years earlier. That was when she told me about her horse, Snick. God knows how to get one's attention, and he knew horses would get mine. So with God working through Margie, I got my first horse, Rocky. When I told Margie that I wanted to get a horse, she said, you need to be sure, because we'll have you a horse in a week if you really want one. Well, it only took 2 days, and Margie found Rocky for me. Rocky is perfect. I couldn't ask for a better first horse. Rocky stayed at Margie's for 2 weeks, and then I was supposed to board Rocky at another farm. The day I was to move him, I was just sick. I was afraid he would not survive at the other stable. That is the night God sent Margie and Larry out of the valley and up on the hillside with me. They offered to let Rocky stay there. I accepted, and Rocky's been there ever since. I began riding with Margie and her friends, her Christian friends. The first time I was going to ride with Great Adventure Fellowship, Margie told me that they were Christians. She said it like it was a warning or something. I'm not sure if she thought I would back out or what. I think back now, and I know the warning was from God, and he was about to increase the pressure to join the flock. When I had Rocky for a year, I decided I needed a horse trailer so I could go camping with Margie and the group. Well, almost right away, I found the perfect trailer, but they wanted too much money for it, so I wanted to bargain with them. They didn't bargain because they didn't have to. While I was trying to barter, Kathy Cole, one of Margie's friends, bought the trailer. All during that first year, I'd felt God tugging at my heart, but I strongly resisted. I knew he sent me that trailer so I could ride with my Christian friends, and I passed it up. Eventually, I did buy an old rusty trailer so I could go on the rides and go camping with the group. Over the next year, God continued to tug at my heart, and he was very patient. I continued to ride with Margie and her friends, who were quickly becoming my friends. There were times when only 2 or 3 of us women would go camping. When Sunday morning arrived, someone would say, "Should we do devotion with just so few of us?" I would always say yes. It was so important and made such a huge difference in my life. Now, I know why. Matthew 18:20, "For where 2 or 3 gather together because they are mine, I will be right there among them." I began to question God again. This time, I wanted to know what I had done to deserve being so blessed. I even asked Margie, "What have I done to deserve the blessings that were happening in my life?" I would go camping with just Margie or with Margie, Larry, and the group. Every time we went camping and Kathy came, I had to see that trailer. And it ate at me inside. Oh yes, I coveted it. During that same year, God sent more of the flock out on the hill with me. Lori and Jerry, Debbie and Robert, Kathy and her trailer, and some other friends as well. By now, I had begun praying again, mostly thanking God for all the blessing I was receiving. But I didn't dare ask for anything for myself. I would only pray for the other people, like for someone else's health or faith. Then in January 2006, I went to Lakeview Plantation with the flock that had been sent to join me on the hill. I was camping in a tent and using the rusty trailer I had been willing to pay for. It was a wonderful weekend. Then the rain came. It rained the entire last night and day. Everyone had to pack up in the rain. My friends with campers were packed up in about an hour. It took me 3 hours to get everything together. I was so sore and worn out, I cried all the way home. By the time I got there, I knew I would have to get a trailer that I could sleep in if I was going to continue camping and trail riding. The first weekend after that trip was January the 7th, 2006. I drove over to Middleborough Trailer Sales between Sumter and Columbia. I talked to Ronnie, and he had a trailer that was not good enough and one that was way too good. So I told him what I was looking for, and he showed me a yellow legal tablet with 3 pages of names and phone numbers of people also looking for trailers. He said he didn't know of a trailer available like what I was looking for, and he put my name and number at the very bottom of the 3rd page. I thought to myself, I will never hear from him. That same night, Great Adventure Fellowship had its January meeting. They were selling T-shirts, and I bought 2 because I wanted to support the fellowship, but I didn't feel worthy to wear the T-shirts. Tuesday, January the 10th, 2006 was a beautiful warm day, and Margie called me and said, "Play hooky and come ride with me." Always your friends that get you in trouble, isn't it? I asked my boss for the afternoon off and went to Margie's. She had also called Kathy to come and ride with us. There was that trailer again, another kick in the gut. Every time I saw it, I noticed something great about it that I didn't know before. I would think, why didn't I buy that trailer? This whole time, Kathy was unaware of my passing on the trailer and that I wished I had just paid the asking price. We had a beautiful long ride that day. We left Margie's around 2:30 that afternoon. On my drive back to town, I decided to talk to God. I said, "God, if you find me another trailer, please give me the sense to buy it this time." I didn't want to be like the man in the flood. You know, where God sent him a boat and he said, "No, God's going to save me." Then God sent him a helicopter and he still said, "No, God's going to save me." I didn't ask God for the trailer I wanted, but I was picturing what I wanted in the back of my mind. I made a few stops before I got home. I arrived about 4:30 p.m., and when I walked in, I noticed the light on the answering machine was flashing. I pushed the button, and the voice said, "Linda, this is Ronnie. I have a trailer you might be interested in. It's exactly like the one you're looking for." That message changed my life. I heard God as loudly as if he were standing right in front of me. I began shaking and dropped to my knees right then and there. I knew he was through waiting and that I was to join the flock now. I asked God to forgive me of my stubbornness, and with his grace, I would be a better Christian. That message began a week of amazing blessings. The ladies I ride with meet for dinner once a month, and we were meeting that night. I called Margie right away and told her about the trailer, but I didn't tell her about the prayer. When we got to dinner, she had told the women who were there about the trailer. I said, "You don't know the half of it." And I told them about the prayer. They said, "Get out your checkbook." I went that night in the dark to look at the trailer. It was perfect, everything I had pictured when I prayed. However, I forgot to picture the awning, so it didn't come with one. I went the next day and looked at the trailer in the daylight with Ronnie and asked him, "Where did this trailer come from? On Saturday, you didn't have any." Then I started to ask him why he had called me when my name was the last one on the 3-page list. Before I could finish the question, Ronnie said, "You were fresh on my mind." January, Friday the 13th, I bought the trailer. I had to tell Ronnie why he had chosen to call me and not someone else from those 3 pages of names. I was very nervous because I was afraid he would think I was a nutcase, one of those Jesus freaks. When I told him that it was God working through him that made him call me, and you know what happened? He said, "That's awesome." Then he asked me, "Where do you go to church?" I started to cry, and I said, "I don't." Ronnie said, "Wow, that's really awesome." Turns out, he's a minister. Ronnie told me about the first night I went over and looked at the trailer in the dark. Ronnie had gotten a phone call while he was at a prayer meeting. The call was to tell him that someone was looking at trailers in the dark. He put his hand over in his heart and he said, "It's Linda. It's okay." That was the beginning of a lot of awesome blessings that week. With all that had happened, I couldn't sleep, and I had to tell every person that had come out on that hill with me how God had worked through them to get to me. They had to know they made a difference. That difference could have been simply witnessing by living a Christian life. It is so overwhelming when I think how patient God is and how many, many people he worked through just for me. It is truly awesome. The reason I'm telling you my story is because you need to know that you make a difference. If you are one of God's people in the flock, witnessing by living a Christian life and being a good Christian, please know it shows. You need to know that you matter and you are making a difference. People notice every day someone is watching. You may not know it, but they are. I watched the flock for many years, too many years. Thank you to all of you who have helped me on my journey. And now I wear my Great Adventure Fellowship t-shirts with pride. The day I went to pick up the trailer, I noticed for the first time a sticker on the back glass. It says, "Riding for the Lord." That is so great. I've always been the kind of person that says that is mine or it's mine, not with this trailer. It's God's trailer to do his work, whatever that is. I don't ask why I'm so blessed anymore. I thank him and praise him for my many blessings. Now I ask, what is it you want me to do? How can I best serve you? And now I listen. I wrote this a few years ago and have had many blessings and many answered prayers since this was written. Update, February the 18th, 2011. Last week at church, our pastor asked a question. When is the last time God spoke to you? The most important time for me was Tuesday, January the 10th, 2006 at 4:30 p.m. He spoke to me a lot that first year or so. I was so amazed and so excited. There were people who were actually jealous and wanted to know why I was so lucky or blessed. People who were lifelong church-going Christians were almost angry at times. I finally figured it out about 4 or 5 weeks before Pastor Paul asked the congregation, when is the last time God spoke to you? The answer is simple. I hear what God's saying to me. Then I listen. It's that simple. I listen. Linda Moore Turner, Riding for the Lord. I'm also telling my story because if you haven't turned your life over to God, it's not too late. let today be your day.
Campfire and coffee from a tin cup in my hand sure warms a finger when it's cold. Playing an old guitar with a friend I understand sure soothes the wrinkles in my soul. Sleeping in the moonlight, a blanket for my bed leaves a peaceful feeling in my mind. Waking up in the morning with an eagle overhead makes me long to fly away before my time. And I think God must be a cowboy at heart. He made wide open spaces from the start. He made grass and trees and mountains and a horse to be a friend and trails to lead old cowboys home again. Well, nightlife in big cities are all right for a while. Sure makes you feel good when you're there. But the country's so pretty and it goes on and on for miles. Takes away your troubles and your care. And I think God must be a cowboy at heart. He made wide open spaces from the start. He made grass and trees and mountains and a horse to be a friend and trails to lead old cowboys home again. And trails to lead old cowboys home again.
I've had the opportunity as Wendell and Linda's pastor to be a part of their lives. It has been a relationship that I have enjoyed. I've picked at Linda on many a Sunday as she headed out the door with that look on her face. If you knew Linda, you know that look. And I would call her Smiley, even though that was seldom the look she had on her face. Even though she hated the fact that I pointed out her scowl, she always hugged my neck before she left. I was so blessed to be a part of the day when Linda got baptized. She was baptized at Jerry and Lori's farm because it was a special place to her. We waded out in those waters together, and she was baptized surrounded by the outdoors and the people that she loves so much. It's the only baptism that I've done so far that I've lost a crock in the bottom of a pond. Me and Linda had the chance on many occasions to speak about spiritual topics. and about her family. She loved her Wendell, even though he drove her up the wall sometimes. She really loved him, and she always only sought what was best for their relationship. I don't think I have to tell anyone here how much she loved Ricky, because Ricky provided the grandbabies. her love was certainly more than that, but the little ones sure had her heart. Linda had a way of showing love to those that she chose, and if you were in the group, you were loved and you were special and you knew it. We were at Wendell's house the other night looking at the Bible. Ricky found this highlighted. 1 Corinthians 13, the first couple verses, it says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver my body up to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing." It brought me comfort seeing that this verse meant something to her. Love matters more than all else. Jesus himself said to love your God with all your heart and soul and mind was the most important, and to love your neighbor as yourself was like it. Linda's Savior said that loving your neighbor was linked to loving God in a way that it couldn't be separated. You must do them both. In order to love your neighbor, you must have the love of God in you. And if you can't love your fellow man, then you can't say you love God. He loves us all. He loved Linda enough to send his only son to die for her sins, and I think her testimony spoke volumes about what God had done to reach her. She believed that. And she strove to be about what he cared about, love. She believed, as the verses say, to do all else and not love was a waste. I pray that you seek the very same thing. I know that Linda is enjoying love now in a new way as she rests in the arms of her Savior whom she loved. And with your permission, I want to take a minute just to speak to what I see that looking like. I like to dream about heaven, because one day I will see it, but for now, I'm left to dream. It is the mark of a true trail rider to always head away from the city. What the rider desires is to distance themselves from the hustle and bustle of civilization. It's hard to understand until you actually get there. The hum of cicadas instead of highway noise. The noise wind makes in the crisp yet not fallen leaves of the oak tree in fall. And believe it or not, the fire actually does crackle when you sit in silence and enjoy its warmth in the dimming light of the evening. It is a therapy that the trail rider knows all too well, and the general populace of our fast-paced society seldom have time for. I know a trail rider. She sought out this very therapy on many occasions. She went on many a seeking trip with those she held dear, and together they saw the sights and enjoyed the delights so seldom seen by others. She found healing in those moments and in those people she rode with. Her journey has taken a turn now. It still includes a horse. Yes, it's biblical. In fact, I will choose to believe that when she stepped onto that golden sand of that distant shore, she found a familiar face. Long and dark, with ears pricked forward at her arrival, pawing at the sand, ready for the trail. Two ladies, together in sync, twisting and turning through the old growth of a never-cut forest, moving along a narrow path while taking in all the sounds and sights and sounds as usual. This is no known trail ride. These sights are new. The dew glistens on flowers and plants of unknown beauty and unimaginable color. breaking into an open field of broom sedge that shines with a golden shimmer not ever seen in any trail ride she has ever been on before. The meadow she finds herself in this time is far beyond the imagination. It brings a tear to her eye as she beholds a new and awesome view of the natural that she has only dreamed of. The horse trots faster as if in anticipation of some unseen goal that she realizes waits ahead. Then suddenly the city comes into view, glowing with majesty as if the sun itself is contained within its walls. The horse neighs and whinnies, and it is in this moment that the rider sees the other horses and riders approaching. It appears to be a large group on the same trail, but coming towards them as if in greeting. What catches her eye is the lead rider. He sits upon a majestic white horse, gleaming white with no spot or blemish. The horse throws his head and whinnies as if to welcome the other horse, but Linda's gaze is fixed on the rider of the white horse. It is as if she has known him her whole life, but never actually seen him until this very moment. She knows whose this is. She has longed for his embrace since she gave her life to him. He reaches up and wipes the tear off of her cheek and welcomes her home. In this moment, she finds herself in the arms of Jesus. The trail ride has just begun. I don't know for sure what heaven